and I'm not too confident in that either.
I know. I
It
could
felt
read
like
your face as you got halfway through that take. Those were some save me eyes saying, "Save me from this terrible take," and I let you ride it through.
All right, speaking of terrible takes, Brad, what are your picks for next week, week 16?
Welcome back to the 11th Island and another CFL weekly episode. This week, we're going to be talking about week 15, recapping that week, and looking ahead to week 16. Before we get into that, just a reminder, we're available here on YouTube or all audio podcast platforms. So Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, you name it, we're there. Or if you're on the podcast, check us out on YouTube. But Chris, what are we starting off with here?
Well, first, we're going to talk about the biggest game of the week, I'd say, because we were there. Argos Ticats, BMO Field. Huge game for both teams. Spoiler alert, the Argos win 31-12. Brad, what was the thoughts going through your little brain while you sat and watched that football game?
Well, the first thing I thought when we got there was there's a lot of Ticats fans here. That's why BMO Field actually looks somewhat full today. Because, I mean, it was probably 50-50 for the fans. So I don't even know if it was a true home game for the Argos. But you can't beat them at BMO Field this year. They probably played, I would say, their best game of the season. They started off pretty slow. Macbeth was missing some throws. It was kind of reminiscent a little bit of the Red Blacks game from the week before. Got a little scared. But Hamilton just came out flat. Masoli could not make a throw. Everything more than 10 yards down the field, he was just overthrowing, and the defense started to just on the field too much. They just started to let it go, and the Argos started putting up points. And then come the second half, they really started piling it on. And I think for the Argos, you got to look at this once they kind of got the first quarter kind of, I don't know if you want to call it jitters or just kind of regular up and down occurrence of this team. Once they got that out of the way, they probably put their best performance of the season, barring not including the Winnipeg game.
Yeah, it was a really fun game. At first, I mean, Mazzoli, what was he doing out there? Just over 50% completion rate here for like what is his 40 attempts, hit 22 of them, and wide misses too. Some really wide, he was just, and I think part of the game plan for Hamilton has always been, we are going to pounce on you. We are going to demoralize you. We're going to come out with a huge play that's going to just leave you deflated for the rest of the game. Especially, this is a huge strategy when you're going against the Argos, who are this lucky second half team that really gets off to slow start. So, I mean, Ticats came out strong out of the gate, or at least tried to be strong out of the gate, making some big plays, and Mazzoli just couldn't cash those checks. So I would have liked to see Mazzoli warm into this game. I think he ultimately had a decent amount of yards, but they didn't come at the right time, and he was biting off more than that Ticat could chew.
Well, they really came out strong, and this was probably the most important game of the season in the CFL as a whole, because the winner of this game is going to clinch first place, which the Argos have now done. They get home field advantage for the East Final. So the Ticats really came out aggressive. I mean, they wanted the ball to start the game. They were taking deep shots down the field, and I think all the play calling was right. They were leaving points on the board when you had wide open touchdowns, and Masoli can't hit the guy. And when he finally in the first quarter he did hit a guy right in the hands, the guy dropped it. So there wasn't anything in sync here, and the Argos were really able to take advantage of that. And a lot of people are starting to call for Dane Evans to get back in for the Tiger Cats. The Tiger Cats fans are really calling for that. I was on the Dane Evans train about 5 weeks ago. I think at this point, and I want your opinion on this, I don't think it's smart. I think Dane Evans has got to be on the bench for the rest of the season. You've chosen Mazzoli. You have to ride with him at this point.
I would disagree. I think you kind of have to. If Mazzoli's going to put up a performance like that, his confidence is going to be hurt. David Evans, yes, he hasn't had a lot of play time recently, but at least maybe in his back of his head, hey, I remember being pretty good for this team this season. So I think you got to go with him. You got to try him out. It's better to be in a scenario where, okay, we can lose in week 16 and still be in the playoffs and have to just play on the road, or like worst case scenario, we've tested Evans, and now we have an idea of both of our quarterbacks going into a road game in the playoffs. Best case scenario, it's like, wow, okay, we made the right decision. I think it's honestly a no-brainer that you got to take this gamble and play Evans just based on how Mazzoli's been looking.
See, for me, I just think you make a QB switch going into the last week of the regular season, which for Hamilton is still a big game because if they win, they're still able to hold home field
Mm-hmm.
advantage. You shake the chemistry and kind of the composure of the team right now. The
Mm-hmm.
quarterback's the most important position probably in all of sports, let alone just football. So when you're making that big of a change, which is going to be probably the fourth QB change of the season, some of them have been no fault of any of the quarterbacks has been due to injuries. But when you're making that many changes, it's up and down. You haven't let the team hit a full rhythm yet. And now you're going to make this change. You're signaling to Masoli that you don't have any trust in him. And then you're looking for Dane Evans to lead you. Now, if Dane Evans goes out and flops, which the last time we saw him play was against the Argos, he didn't look that too good in, what was that, week 9, week 10? So it's been quite a while. So what if he goes out and flops? You're going to go back to Masoli and say, we didn't trust you to go into week 16 and go out there in a playoff game now, right? And then it's you really setting yourself up. I think the decision's been made. It's got to be Masoli, and you got to ride with him. And if you think Dane Evans is the better quarterback, you just got to eat your losses on this season, and you got to roll with it next year because I think at this point, the chemistry and rhythm of the team becomes a bigger issue than the quarterback play when they are so similar in skill set.
I think you're making a lot of good points. I would say just maybe a counterpoint to that
Mm-hmm.
because of the fact there's been so many quarterback changes. You know,
Mm-hmm.
this is an opportunity where you could go to Dane Evans and have the team understand what's going on. You know,
Yeah.
Mazzoli and Evans, they're big boys. They knew they knew going into the season there was a quarterback battle, and they said, no, 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 we're not going to let this get to our heads. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they've gone back and forth. I think from what I've seen, they have a pretty good relationship with one another. They both really
Mm-hmm.
care about the team, and I think because they're so evenly matched, they've really had to learn. One of the areas of growth have been, okay, what does this look like when we're playing the hot hand, and I need to know when to step back, and I need to know when to not take it personally. You know, we who like Mazzoli, you're like, man, I know Dave Evans is pretty good. Like, I wasn't feeling it that game. I'd love to see what who knows what's going on that side. And again, I'm pulling things out of my, here. I don't know these guys personally, so I don't know what's going through their head. But I think if there's a chance that Evans plays, it's because Mazzoli is a big guy and he can handle all the emotions surrounding something like that.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see the change and I think because if the change was going to happen, I think the time for it to happen was at halftime of the Toronto game. I
Mm,
think that would have made the most sense because then you got that going into week 16. But I do see a lot of your points.
mhm.
And like Jared said when we talked to him, I want to say like week 8, that whatever happens in the quarterback situation, they'll figure it out and
Yeah.
that they'll be a force in the playoffs. But
Well,
Chris,
I think to tie the knot on that, I think the compromise between both of our points is the time was halfway through that Argos game.
yeah. And I mean, Chris, the Argos win the biggest game of the year, and we're just like, oh, we're going to talk about the Ticats. How about
Yeah.
those Argos?
Oh yeah.
They came out to play Macbeth. I mean, moving into 7th all time on the Argos passing yards list. All assets of the game are going. Boris Beatty continues just to be a rock star out there. They got momentum going, and they're looking good going into that East Final, and especially with Week 16 kind of being a bye with the Tuesday game, but they're going to go a long time before they play next, which I think at this point in the season is going to really help them get healthy for the finals.
Hmm. Yeah, because especially, I mean, during that game, I mean, Hamilton's got one of the best defenses in the league. So you're just, I mean, Foster was really banging himself up. I mean, there was
Hmm.
some big hits that the wide receivers took to kind of hold on to the ball. It was a good physical game,
Hmm.
and the Argos really rode through it. A couple injuries. It'd be nice to really get that week off. you know.
Yeah,
Um,
especially on the line, like you got Sean Oakman on the D lines battling injuries. Peter Nicastro, who very well
mhm,
for an O lineman might win rookie of the year.
mhm,
Been battling some injuries, so it's gonna be good for them to rest up. I mean, you got to play this really short notice game Tuesday, but they're gonna have some time afterwards to rest. And the momentum of clinching first, when people were picking them to finish third. Like they were
mhm,
putting them with the Red Blacks at the start of the season. There was
mhm.
no faith in the Argos. We were the only ones that had faith in the Argos, and look where we are.
Well, I mean, we could go back and
Don't
watch our
check the
predictions
tapes.
video.
Don't check the
Don't
tapes.
check the tapes. Don't check the
Just
tapes. But
just trust us. Just trust
yeah,
us.
just trust us. Just I mean, so it's gonna be nice. I mean, the Argos get to go into a game against the Elks, which we'll get to later. Probably gonna be end up facing Nick Arbuckle. I think this is gonna be a fun one, and then and kind of a casual game. Who knows who they start? We'll get
The
into that
Argos.
later.
The Argos.
Yeah, the Argos. Well, we know
They're starting
who. Yeah,
Pipkin.
they're going to
They're
start
starting Pipkin.
Pimpkin, and
Yeah.
then they get to roll into a bye week. There's going to be a big party in Toronto. Let me tell you, December 5th. All right, is that the book on that one? Now that
Yes.
we're 12 minutes in,
Oh, we're 12 minutes.
the stamp fans are going to be pissed that it took this long to get to
Is
them.
that including the cut? Holy, yeah,
Oh
yeah,
wait, no,
okay.
no, no. Like we did mess up quite a bit to start, so that was probably 7 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, so 33-23, the Stamps over the Lions.
Yeah. Well, the Stampeders, last team to clinch a playoff spot, but they're in over the Lions. The BC Lions, this has been a real disappointing season for them because they've
Mm-hmm.
so many games this year, if we look back, that they were always in it. They
Mm-hmm.
were always kicking around. That there wasn't necessarily any aspect where it
Mm-hmm.
was like we this really failed. That's why we didn't get in. It it's been a really disappointing season, especially with Michael Riley. He's
Mm-hmm.
kind of had an up and down year. He hasn't been his regular all-star self, but he's been good. This game, he played really good. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
necessarily on him that they didn't win. It's just they need more pieces. And
Mm-hmm.
to before we get into the Stamps here, I think BC, they go into the offseason, they get a few key difference makers. Maybe like get a key offensive lineman, get
Mm-hmm.
some good defensive like guys that are going to turn the ball over, be big difference makers. You're looking at a
Mm-hmm.
team that could have a home playoff game next year, but at this point, they're just not a good enough overall team. But the
Mm-hmm.
Stampeders, I mean, we were BC was ahead of them at points
Mm-hmm.
this year, and now they're in the playoffs here, probably riding a much hotter streak than the Rough Riders, who they're going to see in the first round.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and yeah, everything's coming together for the Stampeders. I mean, you got Dakeem with the run game, really get some good yardage to
Yes.
supplement Bo Levi Mitchell's arm, which is all coming together. The defense is doing its job, doing its part, and yeah, I think the Riders they're kind of falling asleep at the wheel here with the Stamps coming up hot. I mean, they're not going to pass them in the
Hmm.
standings, but in a playoff game in Saskatchewan, there
Hmm.
might be some fireworks here.
Yeah, Calgary, they were too good. We said it all year long.
Hmm.
They were too good to be in positions that they at one point they think they were 2-5.
Hmm.
They were just not doing well. They finally have started to all put it together. Bo Levi, I'm guessing, is as healthy as he probably has been all season at this point because he really
Hmm.
had a rough start to the year. It's Calgary is really riding the hot hand. I think that they're going to be very lot. I think a lot of people are going to take them on the road against the Rough Riders. I
Hmm.
think that's going to be a popular pick. And I think that if you were to say between the Rough Riders or the Stampeders, who's going to go into Winnipeg, give them the toughest game, I think it's the Stampeders. I think that
Hmm.
they have Calgary has such a winning culture there, top to bottom. The coaching staff, Bo Levi Mitchell, who's one of the greatest quarterbacks in CFL history. You got the defense led by guys like Jameer Thurman. There's just so many guys that know how to win on that
Hmm.
team. That they're always live. They showed it here. I mean, they needed to win this game too going into BC. They lose this game to BC going into the last week. BC would have had a chance to kind of backdoor sneak in, and
Hmm.
they put a stamp on it.
Hmm.
Right, this game wasn't necessary. I wouldn't say BC kept it competitive, but the Stampeders were always in control.
Hmm.
It's they're a really good team, I think.
Yeah, and I think that winning culture, part of what really makes that winning culture even more dangerous in a season like this is that you take people that are not used to losing, losing right from the start and having
Yes.
some issues at QB. I mean, with my Bo
You're talking about Jake
Levi.
Meyer?
Well, I mean Bo Levi's leg, really.
Yes, yes.
And not having your star, and then going through, and so to lose like that, and then to everything comes together, and you can
Yeah.
see the guys in front of you starting to slow down a little bit halfway through the season, and you just start stampeding,
Yeah, and like Bo Levi talked about in the media a little bit too. This is one of the only times that Calgary's going to enter the playoffs without everybody pecking them, kind of having
Hmm.
really high expectations for them.
Hmm.
And so it's really easy for them to be dangerous as the
Hmm.
underdogs coming in here. You don't
Yeah.
have the weight of all of these expectations laying
Hmm.
on you, all that extra pressure. You can go in there and just compete knowing that you're playing with house money.
Hmm. And it's so much more true in the West with the Blue Bombers, who have just been perceivably invincible all season.
Yeah, for a long time, people have
Hmm.
essentially penciled their name in as the
Hmm.
champs.
Hmm.
So at this point, I mean,
Like
against
you can't go on to CFL.com and take a look at an article and say,
.ca,
hey,
hey, put some
or
respect.
or
.ca.
.ca, sorry. You can't go on to CFL.ca, look up an article and say, "Man, I want to see what's going on in the world of CFL," without scrolling down to find 3 comments from Blue Bombers fans saying, "What's the point of even having a season anymore? Bombers are going to win."
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
no
No,
fun.
no, exactly. Well, it makes it fun when if in the West Final they fall apart. But we'll have to wait
Mm,
about 3 weeks to find out on that. But
mm.
Chris, speaking of those Blue Bombers,
Oh, are you gonna segue? Woo! Okay. 28-14. The Bombers sent out the B team and they lost to the Montreal Alouettes, the A team. Brad, what were you
yes.
thinking there?
Well, exactly like you said, Montreal put out their A team in a game that they needed to win, and Winnipeg put out the B team. They sat a lot of people out on defense and on offense, most notably Jackson Jeffcoat on the D line and Zach Claros, the quarterback. And Sean McGuire had quite possibly the worst game by a quarterback in the CFL this season. And there's been some really bad games by quarterbacks this year. He had, I believe, 4 interceptions. At one point, he had 2 on back-to-back throws. There was an interception that got overturned because the guy was out of bounds. So McGuire said, "Hey, good one. I'll give it right back to you on the next throw." Just he had a terrible game. He was missing guys. There'd be ones wide receivers would run a hook route 8 yards down the field, and he'd just bury it 5 yards into the ground.
Hmm.
Just he couldn't make a throw. I don't know if the nerves were getting to him. I don't know what was going on, but clearly, I mean, Claros needs to stay healthy for Winnipeg to be good here. And I think if you Mike O'Shea, you kind of have to sit Claros again going into the next week
Hmm.
because he can't get hurt because you're not winning a game with McGuire as a quarterback. No disrespect, but he's just not good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's funny too with I mean, Coach O'Shea saying like we got to put out a winning product for the fans. We can't disappoint the fans. We can't let up. And then you put out a product like that. Sean McGuire.
But yeah, in all fairness, so that was the right decision
It
to
was the
put out
right
a product.
decision. It's the right decision, but it's interesting to see. I mean, but the Montreal Alouettes, crazy game for them. I mean, Eugene Lewis,
Oh, he had a hell of a game, yeah.
yeah, 35 passing yards.
I know that was a beautiful little trick play that they did. He had 2 touchdowns in the first half. I mean, Geno Lewis, probably. I would go to. I think he's the best wide receiver in the CFL.
Hmm.
I think
Oh,
I think that's a safe pick to say. I mean, it helps as he's a friend of the program.
hmm.
That helps for sure. But I mean, that's just straight facts. He's the best wide receiver in the CFL. I think, in all fairness, as CFL fans, we'd be lucky if he was still around next year because
Hmm.
he's probably bringing his talent south of the border.
Mhm.
Going into the playoffs, though, he's got that chemistry with Trevor Harris now
Mhm.
because him and Vernon Adams real good friends. We talked about that before the season started with Gino, so it was going to always be a little bit of time to build chemistry with another quarterback. That chemistry is built now. We know Trevor Harris is the quarterback going through the playoffs. Vernon Adams is officially done for the year. The Trevor Harris trade's looking good. He's playing well. He's done really well. Even in the losses, he played
Mhm.
good. So it's looking like Montreal could be a force to be reckoned with here too.
Yeah, and I mean, even with Sean McGuire being rolled out, the Bombers B team, as we joke about, for the Alouettes, a little confidence boost, a little fun, a chance to stunt, have some trick plays, which, I mean, nobody does it better than the Alouettes in the first place,
Yeah.
really build up some good vibes as you head down the stretch and try to steal a home game from the Ticats. I
Yeah.
think this is a huge, and I mean, even to beat the Bombers, you beat the boogeyman. There's a caveat on it. There's an asterisk, of course, but you're one of the only two teams to do it, and you got to put some feather in your cap. So for the Alouettes, big win this week.
No, I agree. It's something that you have to build the momentum on. You're going into the last game of the season against the Red Blacks, which what we've seen should be a win here. You got a real chance, an opportunity at getting a home playoff game. You have to take this and build your confidence. And you might see if you go on a run in the playoffs, you might see Winnipeg again. And as much as Winnipeg's going to say we had our B team out there, people remember. They're going
Hmm.
to remember that loss, and and Winnipeg let them start getting that downward momentum.
Hmm.
But it's going to be Montreal's really they're another team that they were really struggling at the start of the year, and that they've really started to pick it up.
Hmm.
It's kind of been the theme for a lot of teams in this league this year that they were really just kind of muddling along, just really kind of below 500, and the year they just shoot back up.
And it's funny how stuff works out where we look at other teams that have gotten hot once their starting QB returns from injury, or
Hmm.
things start to come together and figure themselves out once. But really, in the absence of Vernon Adams, the Alouettes have really heated up, and that's no discredit to Vernon Adams because he was
No.
playing phenomenal through the middle of the season when he was injured. But I mean, the guys have really rallied, I think, for him, around him, to pick up the
Hmm.
slack, to welcome a guy in Harris into Montreal, allow him to teach, you have to be welcoming to the guy in order and obviously we see the wide receiving core really having a good relationship with him on the field. I mean, that
Yeah.
speaks to a phenomenal culture out in Montreal.
It's really reminiscent of the 2019 Winnipeg Blue Bombers when Matt Nichols went down with an
Hmm.
injury. They traded for Zach Claros. They went into the playoffs, first game on the road, and they rattled off 3 road wins to win the Grey Cup.
Hmm.
I'm not saying it's going to happen, but we're looking at a reminiscent of that. It's very similar story, but it's going to be interesting to see come the playoffs.
Hmm.
And back at West, Chris, what are we
Finally,
looking?
this one's big brain title: Elks upset because they were trying to upset and they were upset. It is 29-24 for the Rough Riders. Brad, thoughts on the game?
Well, two thoughts right away is first, the Rough Riders, they keep winning games, but they do so without inspiring any confidence. They just scrape across against some pretty rough looking teams, and then you keep going, well, how can they win a playoff game if they can barely win this? I mean, I'm not saying that they can't, but these are the least inspiring wins I think I've ever seen. And two, Taylor Cornelius for Edmonton is shot. He's gonna make me call him a good QB because he keeps playing better and better. Clearly, Edmonton has a lot of confidence in him, and he's starting to kind of make them seem like they have it in the right place. And you have
Mm-hmm.
to. Edmonton is kind of a train wreck here. So if he
Mm-hmm.
was playing a good team, he might be putting up some real numbers here. I'm not prepared to say he's a good quarterback yet. I think Nick Arbuckle still might be the best quarterback on that roster right now. But
And
Cornelius
maybe in the
is
league, who
shocking.
knows?
And well, I think that would be a stretch. But Cornelius has shockingly surprised me. And at this point, the season's all but wrapped up. I'm going to be interested to see. It's going to be interesting to see what the quarterback room looks like for Edmonton next year. I think you're going to be rolling out Cornelius and Arbuckle and
Mm.
who they decide to run with. But Saskatchewan, what do you think here, Chris? Do you think that they're going to be able to kind of pull it together? And I would say, do you think that these wins are a cause for concern in the vein that the wins are coming?
I don't know. I would be hesitant to go that far because now we're starting. I mean, they know what they have to get done in
Hmm.
order to get into that second place spot, get that home game, and
Hmm.
they've done that. You're going up against the Elks. Um, you know, that's all you have to say about that. I mean, I think to still be playing Cody Fajardo even when other teams are starting to bench their guys, their main guys, they're still rolling out Cody Fajardo. If I'm Cody Fajardo, I'm not. Am I doing 100%? I'm gonna say I'm doing 100%, but really, am I? But you got to put yourself in the position of a player who's really. I mean, this is your job, this is your livelihood, and you want to be healthy through this season to put yourself in a position to win a Grey Cup. And you also, I mean, gotta still play next season. So, you know, are you gonna go 100%? Is a foot gonna come off the gas? Are you going to go right down, pedal to the metal once you hear those fans yelling and you're running out onto the field for a playoff game at home? Let's see what happens.
I think Fajardo. I think Fajardo goes 100% every time he touches that field. I think that's a good reason to take him out of this week's upcoming game. Now that you've locked in that home field, I think Fajardo is an absolute baller. No matter what his performance says, I think he goes out in that field 100% of the time, giving it all he's got. Which is to say, I think why, like I said, I think that's why he's going to be
Mm.
sitting on the bench this week. But I disagree.
Yeah, and I'm not too confident in that either.
I know I
It
could
felt
read
like
your face as you got halfway through that take. Those were some save me eyes saying, "Save me from this terrible take," and I let you ride it through.
Oh, it's happened a couple times today. All right, speaking of terrible takes, Brad, what are your picks for next week, week 16? First off, we got
Well, okay,
tonight's game.
wait. I will say before we're going
Oh,
into
okay.
week 16 here, we have to note that there is essentially only two meaningful games. There are only two teams that really care about anything going into the final week of the season. We have Hamilton and Montreal. If Hamilton wins, they will host the semifinals.
Hmm.
If Montreal wins and Hamilton loses or ties, then Montreal will host it.
Hmm.
So Hamilton, they're currently tied. Hamilton has the tiebreaker between the two teams. So when I'm giving the picks, keep in mind those are the only two teams that have anything to care about. A lot of other people are playing the backups.
Okay.
Let's go.
All right, let's go. So, first off, tonight's game. This video is coming up
Yes.
at 5 on Tuesday. And this game, so we'll just quickly gloss over it because it's probably already happened by the time you get to this. But Elks taking on Toronto, what, like 4 days rest, 3 days rest? I don't even know. Elks.
Yeah, the
Arbuckle's probably going
Argos.
to be
Yeah,
playing for the Elks.
well, I don't know. They might still roll with Cornelius. Yeah, like I mean, when you're watching this, the game's probably already happened. I think this. I would love to sit here and say the Argos win, but this is a good kind of a letdown game for the Argos where they're going to be playing a lot of backups. It's really short week for them. It's short week for the Elks as well. The Elks. I'm not too confident. This is such a toss up because you don't know what's going to happen. But I'll take the Argos to win here. I just think they're the better team, but don't be
Mhm.
shocked if the Elks. It's not a stunner if they
Yeah.
win because of the way the rosters are going to be.
Yeah, and the spread is -4.5 for the Argos. So,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
but
So
interestingly, a high over 47 points.
yeah, I think you take the under. There's too many backups on the field.
Hmm.
You're always going to say that the defense is probably going to be better with backups, and then I think if you're going to take a spread, you take +4.5 for the Elks, and then even if they lose, they hopefully keep it within a field goal.
All right, so now everybody that's seen this game, watching this video, use whatever happened as the barometer to
Hmm.
test uh, whether you should take these picks or not. So next Friday, Ottawa going to Montreal. Montreal's minus 14 and a 45-point over under.
Before I give the pick, what we really should do after week 16 is we should go back and actually tally up and find out what my record is.
Yeah.
Because we have
Well,
not kept track of that
yeah,
whatsoever.
Brad, we'll edit this part out where we're saying it just in case it's bad, and then no one comes looking for it. Okay. All right, back
No,
cut. We're action.
okay. So it's in Montreal or in Ottawa?
It's in Montreal.
Minus 14 and a half.
Minus 14 for the Alouettes. That's pretty.
You know what? I think the Alouettes are coming out here strong. They want to
Mhm.
play this game at home. They want to stay at home. Ottawa at this point doesn't have much to play for, and they've been kind of stinking it up. Montreal minus 14.
Yeah, and that 45 over under. I feel like I'm slapping that 45 over because I feel like the Alouettes could get that on their own.
Yeah, I agree. I think the Alouettes put up 40 points. The Red Blacks might put up a few.
And then here is another. Speaking of over unders that are kind of interesting, the Elks are heading to BC to take on the Lions. The Lions are minus 4.5, and the over under is 48. It's kind of interesting.
I think the Elks win here. BC's in such a deflated position, given that they were kind of in the playoff race until last week. The Elks have been out of it for a long time. The Elks still have something to prove, the players like Cornelius and everything. BC, they still have things to prove, but they're in a much more deflated place. I think you take the Elks here. And then what was the over under you said?
The over under for that game 48.
I think we take the over here. BC's been putting up points,
Mhm.
and they've been losing high-scoring games, so I think we trust that it's another one of those.
Now, I mean, the only thing is, will the Elks be able to even have anything to offer, in terms of points? We're talking about 3 road games to end the season in the
You know what,
space
you're
of
right.
about a week.
Take BC. I forgot that they play 3 games in 9
Yeah.
days. Take BC. No, 100% take BC, and I'm changing it to the under because I know that changes everything. I
Yeah,
completely
because
forgot.
they're playing
I
they're playing in Saskatchewan last weekend. Tuesday tonight they're playing in Toronto, and then they're going all the way over to BC in a
Yeah,
week.
flip it. BC and the under.
Yeah.
The Elks might get shut out. Yeah,
Which
I'm
is why
sorry. I
which is
forgot about
why Arbuckles, and also it's like you're not playing for anything.
that. Yeah, no, you're right.
So
You're right.
this
BC
is
and the
this
under.
is the like Taylor Cornelius Canadian showcase tour right now going on. All right, so then finally, no, there's 5 games. So then we have Saskatchewan going to Hamilton. This is going to be a good game here. 42-point over under, really low score. And who does Vegas have winning? Hamilton Ticats minus 3.
Yeah, I think Saskatchewan's not been playing too great. I think they're going up against a team that's got a lot to prove right now in Hamilton. They want to play at home. I think taking minus 3. They'll win by a field goal. And then the over-under at 42.5. I think we take the over here. Hamilton's defense hasn't been playing as good as they can. Saskatchewan can put up points. And we got to trust that Hamilton's offense is going to kind of piece it together in a not make or break, but in a big game.
All right, and then finally, Saturday, November 20th, to close out the regular season, the Stampeders are hosting the Blue Bombers. And then we got minus 4 for the visiting Bombers, 41.5 over under. Brad, last pick of the regular season.
If McGuire's starting for the Blue Bombers, I would take the Stampeders money line here. And you said I would take the under. I don't trust Winnipeg to put up points with McGuire. That is, if McGuire is starting, wouldn't shock me to see Claros get at least a half of play in here just so he's not sitting on the bench for 4 straight weeks. But I would take the Stampeders here. I think that's the Blue Bombers at this point. They're just thinking about the West Final. They got nothing to play for. It's not that it's the Stamps have anything to play for, but they need this win more so for momentum. So I trust them, especially if Winnipeg's going to be resting a lot of guys.
is this a situation where you almost can say, okay, if the Stamps are the dogs right now, as Vegas has it, but we don't know who's officially going to start the game, but I think it's going to be McGuire. Do you do kind of one of the meta bets and you get in a money line for the Stampeders before that gets announced and the odds tilt? Is that one of those things that you're thinking about this week
Yeah, I
before
mean,
that gets
I
announced?
yeah, I think I'd put it now. Even if Claros is starting, he's not playing the whole game, I don't think.
Hmm.
And that means if Claros starts, he's not getting the second half, which is the
Hmm.
most important. So
Hmm.
I think that's fair. I think money line would be the safe pick,
Hmm.
especially in a situation where that line can only go up for the
Hmm.
Stampeders.
All right, and that's the book on this week 15 recap. We're gonna move on to week 16 as Brad tells the people what they got to do now that we're done the video.
Yeah, I mean, if you like this, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the post notifications on YouTube, follow us on the audio podcast platforms. We'll be back next week with week 16, the final week of the regular season, and then we'll be getting into playoff talk. Been waiting all year to talk about that. But until then, do all the things like I said, like, comment, subscribe, follow. Check us out, 350, 500 subscriber giveaway on YouTube. And enjoy the slate of games this weekend, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.